Previously, we saw how the Israelites, once honored in Egypt because of Joseph, became slaves. Their lives turned from freedom to suffering, and the Egyptians treated them cruelly. But in the midst of their pain, something was about to change. God was preparing someone to challenge Pharaoh himself, someone who would lead his people to freedom. And it all began with a baby.
The Israelites are becoming too many. If war comes, they will turn against us. I command, every Hebrew baby boy must be thrown into the Nile.
One desperate mother refused to let her child be taken. She placed him in a basket and sent him down the river. But what would happen next? Who was this child? And how would he grow up to change everything? In the dimly lit home of a Hebrew family, a mother and father whispered in hushed tones. Their newborn son, a precious gift, had been hidden for months, but the danger was growing. Egyptian soldiers scoured the land, searching every home for Hebrew baby boys. The mother, Jochebed, knew the time had come. She could not let them take her child. Holding her son close, she gently placed her fingers over his lips as he stirred. Determination filled her eyes. She would do whatever it took to save him. Outside, the rhythmic march of soldiers drew closer. Their voices carried through the streets as they searched house after house. Jochebed's heart pounded. She looked at her daughter with urgency. The moment had arrived. Under the golden glow of the sun, Jochebed knelt by the banks of the Nile. In her hands, a small woven basket, carefully coated with tar to keep the water out. Her daughter, Miriam, stood nearby, watching the river's slow-moving current with uncertainty. With one last loving stroke across her baby's face, Jochebed whispered a silent prayer and placed him inside the basket. As she released it into the water, the gentle current carried him away. The baby cooed softly, unaware of the danger that lurked beneath the surface. Beneath the rippling waters, two glowing eyes emerged. A crocodile, its massive form gliding just below, set its sights on the fragile basket. Closer and closer it swam, its powerful tail propelling it forward. On the riverbank, Miriam gasped, watching in horror. But before the beast could strike, the sound of oars cutting through the water echoed in the air. A royal boat, manned by Egyptian guards, rowed past. The disturbance sent the crocodile retreating into the depths. The basket drifted further down the river, carried by the current until it reached the lush palace gardens. There, Pharaoh's daughter bathed in the Nile, surrounded by her maidens. As she turned, something caught her eye, a small basket floating toward her. Curious, she gestured to one of her attendants, who waded into the water and retrieved it. As she lifted the lid, a tiny infant stretched and let out a soft cry. The princess's heart softened. She knew her father's command, but as she gazed upon the helpless child, she felt only compassion. Miriam stepped forward and bowed before the princess, carefully offering a solution to her unspoken dilemma. The princess looked at her, surprised but intrigued, then nodded in agreement. Without hesitation, Miriam turned and hurried away, knowing exactly who to bring. Moments later, she returned, leading a Hebrew woman toward the princess. Jochebed approached, her expression carefully composed, though her heart ached with. Against all odds, Moses was saved. And not only that, God arranged for his own mother to raise him in safety. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace, trained as a prince of Egypt. He had everything: wealth, education, and power. But deep inside, something stirred within him. A truth he could not ignore. Moses watched the cruelty before him, his anger rising. Unable to hold back, he struck the Egyptian taskmaster with deadly force. The man collapsed, lifeless. A heavy silence followed. Quickly, Moses buried the body in the sand, his hands trembling, his breath unsteady. He thought his secret was safe. But the next day, everything changed. Two Hebrew men quarreled, shoving each other in anger. Stepping in to stop them, Moses was met with a piercing accusation.
Are you going to kill me too, like you did the Egyptian?
One of them knew. Fear gripped him. If the Hebrews knew, Pharaoh would soon know too. Back at the palace, the news had already reached Pharaoh's ears. Furious, he ordered Moses' execution.
Then he must die.
Realizing he had no choice, Moses fled. He ran from the city, shedding the title of prince with every step. The desert swallowed him as he escaped into exile, leaving behind the only life he had ever known. By nightfall, exhausted and alone, he collapsed near a well in the wilderness. The weight of his actions and the burden of exile pressed heavily on him. He was no longer a prince, only a fugitive. By morning, in the land of Midian, 7 sisters came to draw water from the well, tending to their flock. Their work was interrupted by a group of shepherds, rough and aggressive, who pushed them aside. The sisters protested, but they were powerless to resist. Then, a lone figure stepped forward. Moses confronted the shepherds, his presence commanding. When words did not suffice, his strength did. With swift movements, he drove them away. The sisters, astonished, watched as their unexpected protector stood before them. Later that day, they brought him before their father, Jethro, the priest of Midian. Jethro observed the stranger with interest, recognizing both weariness and strength in his eyes. When asked of his origins, Moses hesitated. His past was now a wound too deep to speak of. Instead, he simply admitted, he had no home. Jethro smiled warmly and offered him a place among them. Over time, Moses settled in Midian. He married Zipporah, Jethro's daughter, and became a shepherd, living a quiet life. But though his hands worked the fields, his heart remained restless. Deep inside, he wondered, was this truly his destiny? Years passed, and Moses lived in peace, tending his flock in the wilderness near Mount Horeb. But God had not forgotten him. Suddenly, a strange sight caught his eye, a bush engulfed in flames, yet unburned. He stopped, staring in confusion. This was no ordinary fire.
What is this? A fire that does not destroy.
Moses, remove your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy ground. I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries. And now, I am sending you to bring them out.
Me? But who am I to do this?
I will be with you.
If I go to the Israelites and say, the God of your fathers has sent me, they will ask, what is his name? What do I tell them?
Tell them I am who I am has sent you. This is my name forever. Pharaoh will resist, but through signs and wonders, he will let my people go. And when they leave Egypt, they will not go empty-handed. They will take silver, gold, and fine clothes.
Moses had just received a calling that would change the world. But would he accept it? Could he stand against Pharaoh? And what miraculous signs would God give him? Stay tuned as we witness the power of God in action.
But what if they don't believe me? What if they say, the Lord has not appeared to you?
What is in your hand?
A staff.
Throw it on the ground. Reach out your hand and take it by the tail. This is so they may believe that the God of their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to you. Now put your hand inside your cloak. Put it back into your cloak.
Lord, I am not eloquent. I have never been. I am slow of speech and tongue. Please, Lord, send someone else.
Who gave humans their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he speaks well. He is already on his way to meet you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you to speak and will teach you what to do. He will be your spokesperson to the people, and you will be like God to him. Take this staff in your hand. With it you will perform the signs.
And so, Moses, the runaway prince, the shepherd, the man who once doubted himself, was now chosen by God to stand against the most powerful ruler on earth. He wasn't strong in speech. He wasn't confident. He wasn't fearless. But God didn't choose him for what he was. God chose him for what he would make him into. And just like that, Moses' life would never be the same. Would Pharaoh listen? Would the Israelites believe? The stage was set for the greatest showdown in history. But Pharaoh's defiance would come at a cost. The battle had begun. What did you learn from Moses' story? Do you ever feel unworthy of God's calling? Do you sometimes doubt yourself like Moses did? And don't forget to like and subscribe for the next incredible episode, where Moses stands before Pharaoh, and the plagues of Egypt begin.